everyone. It's Nancy at Sipping and Painting Hampden, and today I'm going to teach you how to paint this beautiful painting called January Moon. Now this painting is on a 12 by 24 canvas, and I want to make it on a 16 by 20 canvas, so I'm going to change it up a little bit to fit on this canvas here. I have in front of me some water in a container. You'll need some water. You'll need some napkins. You'll need a variety of brush sizes. I just am going to use a large, a medium, and a small. So if you have a variety, you'll be able to make it work. And then I'm going to use, here's my color palette. I have yellow, red, black, blue, and white. I'm actually, I'm going to use all those. Very little red. You could even get away with not using red if you just want a true lemon yellow moon. But yeah, you don't need much. Okay. And I have my beverage of choice. This is the second painting I've done today, so I'm going to drink some water. But you might want to get a glass of wine or a cup of hot tea, whatever helps you relax. I'm painting in Denver. Denver's a very dry place, and so I'm going to make sure that my canvas has some water on it. I'm going to use some clean water and just cover my canvas with the water all over, and that's going to help my paints not dry out too quickly. Denver's a very dry place. If you live in a humid place, you might not need to do this, but in Denver, it's very dry, and so we need to just keep things from drying out. Acrylic paint dries quickly anyway, maybe 5 to 10 minutes if it's a thin coat. Real quick in Denver. If you're in a humid place, it might take 15 or 20 minutes or even a half hour. Just depends on the humidity where you are. So anyway, a little water, that'll help things. Okay, now this painting has a greenish background, but it's a blue green and it's light. So I'm going to have to mix some white with some blue and a little yellow. So I've got some yellow. I'm going to pull that over. I'm going to use the white that's there because it's not a lot. And I'm going to mix those together with some blue. Now go easy on your blue. It depends on what color blue you have. There's a lot of different colors of blue. There's primary blue and cobalt blue and cerulean blue and ultramarine blue and phthalo blue. So many wonderful colors of blue. And depending on the color that you use, you will get a different shade of green when you mix a little white, some yellow, and some blue. So that, my color is not going to be exactly like that color, and I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. Mixed in a little bit more yellow. And if I get a more spring green, I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. As long as I have enough to cover my canvas and I'm happy with the color. No one's ever going to see the original painting. They're just going to see mine, right? They're just going to see yours. They're going to think you're a genius. So don't worry if yours is not exactly like your inspiration painting. Depending on the kind of paint, the amounts that you mix in, it's all going to be a little bit different anyway. All right, so I'm getting there. I'm just putting in my blue gradually because blues can, sometimes some pigments of blues can be very, very strong. So I'm just putting in those carefully so I don't overdo the blue. Mine is a little bit more muted. And I think that's because I started with a yellow that wasn't already pure yellow. I had already added a teeny tiny drop of red to mine when I painted my last painting. So now it's more of a golden yellow as opposed to a lemon yellow. But if I added lemon yellow, like straight on regular yellow, I would get a slightly more color, slightly brighter like that one. Okay, but I'm okay with it. I'm going to be happy with this color, and yeah, that's all that matters. Almost done mixing. I need a lot of it because I'm going to cover my whole canvas with this color. So I need a lot. You'll need a lot. Okay. All right. And now I'm going to cover my canvas with that color. I'm going up and down. You don't have to go up and down. You could go side to side. You could go whatever direction you want. I'm going up and down because if I get any streaks in it, that's going to cast some cool shadows into my painting, shadows or light into my painting, which is consistent with a painting of a forest. So I'm going to be okay if I get some of that in there. Add a little bit more white. I'm just mixing in a little bit more white, and it's okay if my canvas, the painting is not 100%, the paint is not 100% uniform top to bottom, the same color, because like I said, that adds some interesting textural changes in the paint. It adds some light in some areas. It just makes my painting a little more interesting if it's not 100% perfectly the same. I hope that makes sense. See how that's a little bit lighter? If I put that on over what I already had, it's blending just fine, but I don't need it all to be exactly the same color. In fact, it's better if it's not, because then it just looks like there's some light bouncing around in that forest. This is an easy painting, and for that reason, I really like it. Like I said, it's called January Moon, and I like it because it's very simple and peaceful. A nice little painting to paint in the middle of the winter. It doesn't have any foliage on it. If you like the look of it and you want to add foliage, it does have a little gray in there, but not too much. You can always add more foliage, no problem. And you can even add foliage in bright colors. No reason you can't. This is a winter scene, but it doesn't have to be a winter scene. It could be any color you want. Now, if your paint is already starting to dry out, like I can feel mine's not quite as smooth as it was a few minutes ago. That's how dry it is here in Denver. What I can do is add a little bit of water. You can mix in a drop or two of water into the paint you still have. If you have a spray bottle, that's always kind of fun, but you don't need a spray bottle. You could just dip your brush in water, get a drop or two of water, and then use it to smooth this out. I just want it to be smooth so that I don't see those canvas marks. In some paintings, canvas marks are really cool. A few minutes ago, I painted a painting that was supposed to look like faux wood. And so having the canvas marks in that one actually helped. But in this one, I want it to be smoother. So that's why I add a little bit of water so my paint stays smooth. I can get this background coat on smoothly. And again, my color is not exactly like that color, but you know, I just really wanted a quick little painting, and I'm just not worried about any of it. Not sure if you ever had that. Oh, that's lime. Woohoo! That's fun. It's fun to mix paint and to experiment a little bit. I'm just mixing up a little bit more because I didn't have enough. And this batch is not going to be the same as the other batch, and I am absolutely fine with that. Just absolutely fine. Let's see. All right. It's all close enough. It's all close enough. So just go ahead and cover your whole canvas with a greenish blue color. That's pretty. Kind of like these different shades of green just coexisting. Ooh, see how blue that one is? That's all right. I'm just going to blend it in. No problem. It's good blended. It's good not blended. It's all good because it's just the background to this painting, and more texture, more color differences add visual interest to the painting. I guess that's as opposed to auditory interest, right? Painting doesn't make any noise, so that's kind of silly, but it sounded good when I said it. Those variations in color just playing off each other. Overall, it's still pretty subtle. It's a more subtle color than that one, but that's again because I had a golden yellow and not a true yellow. This one was mixed with a true yellow, like a lemony yellow. That doesn't really matter. It's a little, there we go. And I'm just going to keep going until I get the canvas strokes out, canvas marks. Now you can paint around the tops and the sides and the bottom if you want. And if you do that, that's called a gallery wrap. And the nice thing about a gallery wrap is, one, your painting looks finished on the sides. It's okay to just hang that way. It looks nice and modern. The other nice advantage to it is you don't need to buy a frame that way, and you'll save money. So it is nice to paint the tops, the sides, and the bottom so that it looks like the painting was just wrapped all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little more water to my paint because I can just paint it thin. It's not fussy. Don't need to do it fussy. And I'll just cover the sides with that same color. If you're really interested in color mixing, this painting was painted with a phthalo green fresh out of the tube. Just straight phthalo green. Actually, I had a little bit of white mixed in. And mine is a more muted version of that color that is mixed with phthalo blue and golden yellow. So depending on if you want yours more muted, you know, but if you just get any blue, mix it with any yellow, a little bit of white, you're going to come up with a green that's going to be pretty in this painting. So no worries to be fussy. We're never trying to be fussy around here. We like to keep things really simple, because if you keep it simple and you have the supplies that you can use without being too fussy in particular, you're going to paint more. It's easy to set up, easy to find your colors. So you don't need to spend a fortune on your paints. You'll paint more. And that's what we want. We want you to paint with us as often as you can. A little more water just to smooth out any rough spots. but I don't put on so much water that it drips. I'm careful to just use a drop or two of water on my big brush when I'm doing this, because I don't want things to drip. It's real hard to get a drip completely covered again, so I like to avoid them. Now I'm going to need to let this dry a little bit before I can paint on my sun or my tree. So go ahead and give yourself 5 minutes or so to let your painting dry. All right, so when you're going to put on your moon, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put on white, and then the white has to dry. And the reason you do that is just because if you put the moon on in yellow over green, it's just going to show up like a lime green. It's not going to be true yellow. So instead of wasting your yellow paint, you can just put on a coat of white, let that dry a little, and then put on the yellow over it. So I'm going to go ahead and put on my first coat of white. It's funny, when I said coat just now, I said it with a really long O, which is a dead giveaway that I grew up in the Midwest. But I don't always hear that myself, which made me kind of chuckle in my head. All right, so my moon is going to go somewhere around here. So to make a circle for a moon, I can do it one of two ways. I can use a template, like a jar lid, a mayonnaise jar lid, or another way I can do it that works just as well is I just put my brush in the center, and then I very slowly circle out. Just real slow. Just take your time, overlapping one row with another, and just circle. If you do it that way, you're going to have a pretty good circle because you're able to correct it each time you go around. It's a lot easier than trying to freehand a circle. Honestly, I hang out with a lot of artists. There are a lot of artists that have worked here over the years, and I don't know anyone who can freehand a perfect circle. But if you start small and then you work your way out, you can get a decent circle. A circle you can be proud of. Start in the center, A round brush works well, but my round brush is small, so I'm using a medium flat brush. A little bit harder than a round for this kind of thing, but that's okay. Or yeah, a round brush is super easy. Anyway, notice how that all mixed in, but that's going to dry, and then my yellow will stick over it better. So I'm going to let that dry a bit, okay? Always make sure your brushes are clean. Stir them in your water a ton, and then you only need to use your napkin to test them and see if they're clean. That way you don't use a ton of napkins. I picked up a little bit more white too, so plenty. All right. So here's another coat of white before I mixed in with green because it was still too wet. There's my white. My yellow is going to stick much better on top of white than it is on top of green. Just putting that coat of white over it. That's what happens when the painting's still wet. I end up having to fix it anyway, so it's not like I'm ahead of the game. All right. Now remember I told you that the yellow that I'm using is a golden yellow, it's not a lemon yellow. And so I can, if your paint is a lemon yellow, sometimes yellow can be a weak pigment. If you mix in just the tiniest amount, just a little tiny amount, like a pea of white, it'll help the yellow have a little more body, a little more stick-to-itiveness, because white is a more opaque color. And what I mean by that is it's thicker, it has more pigment in it than yellow. So it will stick better if you add a little bit of white into your yellow. That's a nice coat of yellow right there. That's nice. And if it starts mixing with your green, because you are like me and you don't wait long enough, then just go slow, go slow. Give it another coat later, no problem. I don't like to let things dry. I'd probably sit on a wet bench if I was at a park. I'd say wet paint, and I'd probably sit right on it. All right, well, that's setting up. What I mean by setting up is drawing. I'm going to take a tiny little detail brush, and I'm going to mix a little white with a little black, just a little bit, so I have a gray, just a little bit. I want just a little gray. And what I'm going to do with that gray is I'm going to put some teeny tiny little trees in the background with just that gray. And so I'm going to take my little detail brush and I'm twisting it as I go up so that I get enough paint. Those little detail brushes don't hold much paint. I just want a little trunk of just gray. And I'm going to put a few of those in there because this painting has a few of those little far away background gray trees. And by spinning the brush, what that does for me is it helps me to keep it crooked, to keep the tree from being too straight. So that one's a little darker. I can mix a little bit new shade of gray each time, but I'm spinning my brush. Watch what I do with my fingers. I'm spinning it like that as I pull up. I want to start each one at a different level so they look like they're in different places. But here you go. Watch what I do with my fingers. I'm going to spin my finger, and as I do that, it forces me to make a more crooked tree. And what I want is a crooked tree. These little brushes, like I said, they run out of paint easy. But notice how the black and the white's not mixed perfectly, and that way I'm getting these really interesting looking trees that have light and dark in them, and that's a good thing. All right, I'm mixing a little bit more. I'm still using this teeny tiny little brush. It's crazy how little this brush is, but it's painting those very far away trees. And if I spin my brush, I get the crookedness that I'm going for. I want it to be crooked. And if you paint really straight trees, they won't look natural. That's the problem. Because natural trees are crooked. They're bent. People step on them when they're growing, and animals may have climbed them and broken them, and they grow different directions to catch the sun. All right, so that was my teeny tiny brush. Now I'm going to move to one that's a little bigger. It's still a small round, but I'm going to use one that's a little bigger because that was just not, those weren't big enough for me. So I'm going to add some more that you can see more easily. See that? But notice how I'm spinning my brush. Spinning my brush to get those little trees. Spinning, spinning. Nice and crooked. Those trees are nice and crooked. Exactly what I want. Crooked, crooked, crooked. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 crooked little trees. You could have more, you could have fewer. It's really your call. But don't have them perfectly spread apart. You want them to be at different distances apart. Then I can also add little branches to some of them by just spinning, having a little of that gray paint on, and spinning the brush as I pull up and out. And if some of them don't even attach to the tree, that's fine, because this is an impressionistic painting. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be an impression of a forest. The experience of a forest, the idea of one, but not perfect. Oh, that had some red in it. How'd that happen? That's okay. Embrace happy accidents and just go with it. That never happened before in this painting because I don't usually have red on my palette, but I did just paint a painting earlier today, so that's okay. That's all right. So I had red on my plate. All right. So like I said, some of these are going to have some branches, and just pull them off and twist as you pull so they're not perfect, okay? So twist and pull and wiggle. And one more. All right. Now those are my small trees. Now what I'm going to have to do is make some more gray. I make some more gray by mixing a little black and a little white together. That's how you make gray. I should have said that. Figured you knew that. A little black and a little white together. All right. That makes gray. And I'm going to use this small round brush to put on gray leaves. And they're just kind of arbitrary in different directions. And I didn't even mix the gray perfectly because I want these variations in shade and texture. So didn't mix the gray perfectly at all. And notice how I'm turning my brush. I want those leaves to look, oh, that had a lot of black in it. That's good. That's good. I want it to be random. I want these leaves to look random, okay? I can put a little more white over them if they were too dark, no problem. Why not? It's your world, you do it your way. My painting is not going to look exactly like the inspiration photo. But then again, I don't want it to. I want it to look like my painting. I'm not going to put any down on the ground. This painting doesn't have it. They're only up above. That's okay. And I'm even going to make sure that there's one or two over the moon, but I'm not quite there yet because that's still drying. I'm going to go ahead and give that moon one more coat of yellow. I just want that to really pop. Made sure my brush is super clean. All right. I want that moon to just pop right off the canvas. Just really say, I am what's giving you light and sun in this harsh winter. And I am radiant and beautiful. That's what this moon is saying. Just but you didn't know moons could talk, right? All right. Super light touch. So I don't want to remove paint, I just want to put it on. And it's okay if the moon shows a little streakiness. Why not? Because there are craters on the moon and reflected light coming from the forest in front of the moon. So yeah, it's not going to look perfect. And this is an impressionistic painting. Nothing is supposed to look perfect. Nothing. That's the whole idea. An impression of the moon. All right. So far, so good. And now I'm going to take that big old medium brush. That's contradiction of big and a medium. It's a medium flat brush. A medium flat brush. And I'm going to put it my white. And I'm going to make these bigger trees. And notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Okay, 5. Lots of paint on my brush. I'm going to start over here and I'm going to put a lot of pressure at the bottom. Why am I putting a lot of pressure at the bottom? Because I want the tree to be wider at the bottom. So I start at the bottom with more pressure, but then as I go up, I'm twisting my brush a quarter turn, and that gives me a thinner tree at the top. And I'm going to do the same thing next to it because this tree has a friend right next to him. wide base, wide base. And then this one's gonna, oh, I think he's gonna overlap with that one. That was a surprise. Wide base, always start at the bottom, pull up, and then get thinner as you go up. You want the trees to get smaller as they go up. All right, now this one, I'm pulling it. It starts a little higher. Notice how it starts a little higher at the bottom, and then I pulled it up. I'm going to do the one to the right of the tree first, and that one's a little higher. Pulling it up, pulling it up. Right off the canvas. But I want it widest at the base, right? Because trees need a base that's to hold them up so they don't fall over. Bob Ross used to say they needed foots. Oh, that's pretty silly. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this last one, I don't want to put it perfectly between these two. It's a big one though. It's coming way down here. And then this one is going to actually go through the moon. Ooh, now I picked up some yellow accidentally. Is that a problem? Not if I don't want it to be. I'm not worried about it. I can always go back and touch up that white. That's not a problem. I'll go ahead and clean my brush and I'll just go ahead and get the rest of that tree on, and I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to paint branches, and then I can come up and let that tree dry a little bit more and make it a little more white if I want to. No problem. But notice how the branches divide. I'll clean my brush again. I did pick up some yellow because I, again, didn't wait for my tree to be dry. And this time I'm going to come up here. You don't have to have 5 trees. You can have a different number. The key is you just want to make sure that you have some tiny, tiny ones in the back and then some larger ones in the front. That's the whole idea. And if you want, you don't even have to have 5. You could have a different number. If I wanted let's say I wanted one that was a little smaller, I could put it here. Why not? It's your world. You decide. You decide how many trees. You decide what kind of trees. But don't make them straight up and down. They're not telephone poles, okay? That's the key. Just don't make them straight up and down. All right. It's kind of nice to have something going off the sides too, just to suggest that this is not Disney World. Nothing's too perfect. So that's kind of cool. And that's kind of cool. All right. Now I'm going to come back in with a small brush. Let me get that. Remember that small round we used before? I'm going to come back in. I'm going to give these trees some branches. Now, notice that these are all white. These have black. That's because we're going to use the business card to give them scars. So don't worry about that. I'm also going to touch up those at the top. So don't worry about that. Get rid of some of that yellow. Don't worry. But I am going to give some black branches to these trees. Okay. So I'm going to pull up from inside the tree, pull up from the side. Don't make them all the same. And I'm going to turn my brush as I go up. I'm going to turn it. So starting on the sides, and I'm going to turn it. So I get that nice wiggly, messy, crooked look. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, that looks funny. Those white trees have black branches, but you know what? These trees are going to have scars in a minute. They won't look all white anymore. So let's just give that a few minutes and you'll see exactly what I mean. And they can go in front of other trees or behind other trees, but you might want to make sure that if a tree branch is in front, that those are only off of the big trees. Because, for example, this one's higher, that means it's farther away. So if this one has a branch that grows over here, it wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? So the ones that grow in front of other trees should really be the ones in the front. This is a lot of information at once. Feel free to rewind and listen to it again so it makes more sense. So you hear it when you're ready. All right. And I'm spinning my brush. See how I'm spinning that brush to get those branches to not all be straight. Some are crooked. That one has a little yellow highlight in it right through the moon. And it's okay, a little yellow highlight's not a bad thing because that just shows there's light on it. Now, what I can do is I can mix in a little bit of white to that black, and I can make some branches that have a combination of white and black on them. See that? That adds some variety and texture, and that's a very good thing. See that, how that one's a little different? That's a good thing. I try to stay, a good tip is pull out from the trunk as you're spinning. Don't go in from the sky. If you pull in from the sky, you're going to leave more paint in the sky and less at where it connects to the tree. And what you want is, you want your paint to be thicker where it connects to the tree, right? To the trunk. That would make sense if that's the thickest part of that branch. And then as you pull out and you twist, you kind of lift off. And that gives that branch a thinner tip. And that just makes more sense. So what I mean is, always come out from the trunk and then lift off, kind of flick up. And that makes the end of your branches thinner than where it touches and starts off the tree. Hope that makes sense. So far, so good. All right, now here comes the fun part. You ready? I'm going to take that business card. I'm going to dip it, just the end, just the end, just the end, like that. See that? Just the end. You can smooth that out even. All right, just the end. Tap off any clumps. We don't want too much. See that? And I'm going to pull very softly, touch to the side and pull very softly and across, very lightly, and it's giving me those speckles and those scars on my tree that make aspens and birches look like aspens and birches. Isn't that cool? And it's just with a tiny flick. Now, if you don't have a business card and you want to use more impressive art tools, you can use a palette knife. That's the general idea. Artists paint with knives all the time, as you know, but I don't want to pass out knives in my studio for the classes when it's not necessary. I can just pass out a business card, and people really have fun painting with a business card. It's a little less intimidating than giving them a palette. Because a palette knife, you know, people think, oh, I'm got to be Bob Ross the first time, and no, you don't. So that's why the business card is easy and a little less intimidating. And I'm trying to hold my card pretty flat and close to the painting without putting my hand in the painting. That could be a little tricky. And if you pick up any white on your card from the trees, that's even better, because then it makes it mix and gives it this cool 2-layer effect. So let's see if I can get down there more easily. Pulling it across, and make sure you stop before the tree ends, so you're not pulling it off into the space, right? Got to be careful and just pull it only the width of the tree or less. You could do it less, and that just puts the scarring on one side of the tree, but don't pull into the sky, okay? Just go slow, take it easy. Isn't that fun? And it's just with a little piece of cardboard or a business card, that's all it is. Super easy. Now I'm gonna touch that up at the top a little bit, make it more white, so I'm not gonna do the top of that one yet. My husband and I went to the Denver Art Fair about 15 years ago, and there was a painting in one of the galleries in the neighborhood where the art fair was. And basically it was trees that looked exactly like this. And I think it was about a 10-foot by 7-foot or 8-foot painting. It was just enormous. And they wanted $10,000 for it. And my husband said, you could paint that. You know how to do those trees. And it was just a forest of aspen trees done with a palette knife, just like this. But again, you don't need a palette knife when you've got a business card. And see, when the white mixes with it, it doesn't look bad. It looks even better. So if your paint's still a little bit wet, no problem. That's just a happy accident. Now I'm pulling all from the right side, but you could pull from the left side too. Or I'm pulling all from the left side. You could pull from the right side too. It just doesn't matter. You could do both or either. Pretty cool, huh? Now, what's different about my painting is I did use that different green. Remember, I didn't use a full-on phthalo green and white like this one did. I used a mixture of phthalo blue and golden yellow, which really gave me this more muted color, but it doesn't matter. All right, so I'm just going to put a little more white back in that tree at the top because it was pretty yellow. That's okay. But I can still put the scars on it and it'll still look great. Not to worry. Not to worry. So if you're saying, well, mine's a little messy, it's not perfect, don't look at your painting from up close. Look at it from 10 feet away. An impressionistic painting is not supposed to look amazing up close. It's just not supposed to. That's not what they are. It's supposed to look good from 5 or 10 feet away. Van Goghs and Monets, they look terrible up close. By the way, you can always, if you look at your branches and they're a little too dark and you want to lighten some of them up, you can always take a really small detail brush and just add some white highlights anywhere you want to those little branches. It just kind of mixes them up and shows that light is hitting those as well. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the whole thing. Impressionistic paintings aren't intended to be perfect. So if you're someone who expects perfection of yourself in your job, keep painting, and then learn to be easier on yourself. Being forgiving of your own shortfalls or things that you're learning, that's a practice, and it's painting is a great way to do that. So if you know anyone who's really hard on themselves, encourage them to start painting, because they will be hard on themselves the first time they paint. That, probably can't change them overnight, but they will probably learn to start cutting themselves some slack when they're enjoying the painting process. They're going to learn. They're going to see themselves get better, and they're going to start to really enjoy watching their talents and their skills get better. This is a pretty easy painting as long as you listen to what I was describing. It's fairly easy. It's a nice painting for people who don't have a lot of confidence. So if you're looking, keep in mind, if you're looking for other paintings to paint landscapes, meaning like plants and rivers and lakes, and they're usually a little more forgiving than, or a lot more forgiving than animals and people. People are super, super, super hard to paint. So go easy on yourself. Start with trees and then learn different kinds of trees. That's a good place to start. Or flowers, and learn different kinds of flowers. But don't expect perfection. Go easy. Be kind to yourself. Start with these impressionistic paintings that are very forgiving. Try that first. And then you'll start to feel more confident. All right. Remember, there were a few gray leaves over the moon, so I'm not going to forget those. I just need a small brush. Where's my small? I've got all my brushes in the water jar. They're all taking a soak in the hot tub. There we go. So I'm going to take a little of that gray, and I'm going to put a couple leaves across the moon because they are there too. And if that's a little too dark, do that. I picked up a little yellow accidentally, and I think it's kind of cool on some of the leaves. Just showing a little reflected light. That's a good thing, right? Don't forget to go all the way up and all the way out to the sides with your painting. Sometimes people, paint just in this condensed area, and then it doesn't look real. You want to make sure it looks like a photograph. And photographs, they would have more out there, right? So carry it over, carry it over. All right. I think I'm done. It's not supposed to look exactly like the original. It's supposed to just show you how to make the original. I'm pleased enough. It's good enough. I think someone will go home with this one and enjoy it. We do have, I'm at Sipping and Painting Hampden in Denver, I-25 in Denver. And when it's not pandemic time, right now it's the middle of the pandemic, so we're closed to in-studio classes at the moment. But when it's not a pandemic, we're open every single day of the year except for Thanksgiving, and we love to teach you how to paint. So if you are in Denver or you visit Denver, come in and paint with us. We would love to have you paint with us. But in studio are going to be after the pandemic's over. Right now, we do online classes on our calendar at www.sippingandpaintinghamden.com. And you can check out our calendar, register for our online classes, or you can keep painting with us on YouTube. We like that too. But since you've been watching us, we would really, really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to our channel. That will help us reach more viewers. That's what we're going for. More viewers and help more people learn how to paint beginning, easy paintings. I'm going to put in a few more little skinny white trees because I noticed that I didn't have too many that were light. Oh, this is a crowded forest. Holy cow. Much more crowded than hers, I think. That's okay. Oh, that was weird. Let's try that again. That's what happens if you start to do something at the last minute. That's all right. Everything's fixable. See that? I can fix right over that. I love acrylic paint for that reason. If you make a mistake, just let it dry and go over it with correction fluid, white paint. It acts just like correction fluid. And then paint it again. That's how we do it. All right, I better stop before I have 20 million trees, because I love painting trees, and I will put in too many if given half a chance. So yeah, so I better stop. I'm gonna go ahead and sign my painting down here in the corner. And I hope you had fun learning how to make business card aspens and birches with me. I always think that's fun. And I hope you'll paint again with me soon. Cheers.